Uganda has had a dramatic week. From music and boxing to a controversial court battle, a shocking football death, the long-awaited conclusion of the Susan Magara murder case, and Uganda's decision to potentially send troops to Gaza. These are some of the biggest stories that have dominated conversations across the country this week. Welcome to Issa Show, where we break down what happened, why it matters, and what you need to know. Let's get into it. Number 1, Ray G shuts down Kololo. For years, Ray G has been one of the biggest musical names to emerge from Western Uganda. But this week, he took his music to one of Kampala's biggest stages, Kololo Airstrip, and the response was massive. The concert took place on Friday, August 7th, after months of anticipation. The event had been promoted as one of Ray G's biggest concerts yet, with major media and commercial partners getting behind the show. When the night finally arrived, Kololo filled with fans. Reports from the event described the venue as being packed with a large crowd, with Ray G delivering his Ankole-rooted music to Kampala audiences. For an artist whose musical identity is strongly connected to Western Uganda, the concert represented something bigger than just another performance. It was a statement. Ray G was essentially demonstrating that music rooted in Western Uganda can travel far beyond the region and command a major Kampala audience. And perhaps the biggest question now is, has Ray G officially entered Kampala's long big league concert scene? Because if the response at Kololo is anything to do by, his next Kampala concert would be even bigger. Shawa beats Chicken, but the results cause drama. Uganda has witnessed one of the most talked about boxing encounters of the week, Shawa versus Chicken. The highly anticipated fight took place on August 6th at Supremacy Lounge in Nankulabi. Fans came expecting entertainment, but what followed was controversy. After the fight, the initial result was disputed, with reports circulating that the bout had been declared a draw. But the controversy didn't end there. The Uganda Boxing Federation later issued a clarification stating that the correct decision should have gone in favor of Shawa. In other words, the result was changed. And suddenly, the conversation wasn't only about who performed better inside the ring. It became a conversation about officiating, boxing administration, and how controversial decisions can affect the credibility of local boxing. For Shawa's supporters, the revised decision was vindication. For Chicken supporters, however, the controversy left plenty to talk about. And that is exactly why this fight became one of the week's biggest entertainment stories. Shawa won, but the decision itself became almost as big a story as the fight. Uganda agrees to send troops to Gaza. Now we move from entertainment to international affairs. Uganda has taken a major and potentially controversial step by approving the deployment of Ugandan troops to Gaza as part of a processed international stabilization force. Uganda's parliament approved the deployment on August 6th. According to reports, Uganda's defense minister told Parliament that US President Donald Trump had approached President Yoweri Museveni in July about Uganda participating in the proposed force. The plan is connected to a wider international proposal for Gaza involving security, humanitarian assistance, and a future administrative arrangement. But there are still major questions. Exactly when would Ugandan troops go? What would their mandate be? Who would they report to? And perhaps most importantly, what risks would Ugandan soldiers face in Gaza? Uganda already has extensive experience in international peacekeeping, particularly in Somalia and other parts of the region, but Gaza is a completely different environment. The situation has generated debate inside Uganda, particularly around the legal framework, the status of Ugandan troops, and what their actual mission would be. So the government has indicated that a status of forces agreement would be agreed. So while Parliament has given the political green light, this does not necessarily mean Ugandan soldiers are immediately boarding planes for Gaza. There are still major steps before an actual deployment. But one thing is clear: Uganda has now officially placed itself among the countries potentially participating in the future security arrangements for Gaza. The Susan Magara case, 9 convicted. This is one of the most emotional stories of the week. For 8 years, the name Susan Magara has remained associated with one of Uganda's most shocking kidnapping and murder cases. Susan Magara was kidnapped in 2018 and held for ransom before she was murdered. Her body was later discovered in Chigo, Wakiso district. The case went through years of investigation and court proceedings, and this week, the High Court finally delivered its judgment. 9 people were convicted over the kidnapping and murder. The court found them guilty of kidnapping Susan Magara with intent to obtain a ransom and subsequently murdering her. Then came the sentencing. 2 of the convicts, Hajara Nakandi and Abbas Musa Buembo, were sentenced to death. The other 7 were sentenced to life imprisonment. The judge described the crime as a carefully planned and financially motivated act. But there is an important misconception. Social media discussions have increasingly focused on the fact that some of the accused have Muslim names or were seen wearing Islamic clothing. That has led some people online to frame the story as Muslims being responsible for Susan Magara's murder. This is not an accurate way to report the case. The people convicted are individuals. Their alleged or established criminal responsibility cannot be transferred to an entire religious community. In fact, Muslim leaders and members of the community have also expressed concern that the case could unfairly create an association between the crime and Islam. So, the responsible way to tell this story is 9 individuals were convicted over Susan Magara's kidnapping and murder. Not Muslims killed Susan Magara. And finally, 8 years, the case has finally reached a major conclusion. 2 people faced death sentences, while 7 will spend life in prison. Dr. Spear faces shillings 30 million fine or prison. Another major legal story involves one of Uganda's most recognizable academic voices and cartoonists, Dr. Jimmy Spear Sentongo. Dr. Spear has found himself in a legal battle with Kampala International University. The dispute goes back to court orders restricting him from publishing material that the university argued was damaging to its reputation. The matter escalated when KIU accused him of violating the order. The High Court subsequently found him in contempt. And now comes the punishment. Shilling 30 million UGX. Dr. Spear has been ordered to pay the money within 14 days or face 3 months in civil prison. The story has generated strong reactions online. Supporters argue that Dr. Spear's work as a cartoonist and public commentator has made him an important voice in Uganda's public debate. Critics, however, argue that court orders must be respected regardless of who he is involved. The legal question, therefore, goes beyond Dr. Spear himself. It raises a broader question about the boundary between freedom of expression, public criticism, and obeying court orders. And the story has already triggered a public fundraising campaign aimed at helping Dr. Spear meet the financial penalty. So the question now is, will Dr. Spear pay the 30 million challenge the decision or end up serving the 3-month sentence? This is a story Uganda will be watching closely. Ugandan footballer David Owori dies after brutal attack. And finally, perhaps the most heartbreaking story of the week, Ugandan football has been thrown into mourning following the death of David Owori, the captain of SC Villa. Owori was only 27 years old, according to several reports. He was reportedly attacked near his home in Kampala's Makindi area. Reports indicate that attackers attempted to rob him and assaulted him with paving stones. He was found unconscious and later taken for medical treatment, but his injuries were too severe. He died on August 5th. Owori wasn't just an ordinary footballer. He had represented Uganda internationally and had played for clubs including Vipers in Uganda, Velez CF in Spain, and Ostensbike in Sweden. He later returned to Uganda and became an important figure at SC Villa. He was part of the team that won the Uganda Premier League title in 2024, SC Villa's record 17th league title. Now, instead of preparing for another football match, his teammates are preparing to bury their captain. The death has shocked Uganda's football fraternity and raised renewed concerns about violent crime and safest the safety of athletes and ordinary Ugandans. The National Council of Sports has called for justice and longer-term solutions to prevent such attacks. And perhaps the most painful part of this story is that Owori had reportedly trained with his team earlier that day. He was preparing for football. Hours later, he was fighting for his life. Now he is gone. May his soul rest in peace. And for those are some of the biggest stories that have dominated Uganda this week. Ray G conquered kololo. Shawa emerged victorious after a controversial boxing session. Uganda received parliamentary approval to potentially send troops to Gaza. The Susan Magara case finally reached sentencing after 8 years. Dr. Spear is facing 30 million Ugandan shillings court penalty or 3 months in civil prison. And Ugandan football is mourning the tragic death of David Owori. But which of these stories shocked you the most? Tell us in the comment sections. And if you want us to keep bringing you Uganda's biggest stories, explained, investigated, and simplified, make sure you subscribe to Issa Show. I'm Issa. This is Issa Show. See you in the next one.